With a look at sportsmanship for teams and participants in Intramural Sports at Florida State University, I'm Director of Intramural Sports, David Peters. The mission of Intramurals is to have fun and enjoyable experiences for our teams in our recreational environment, and one of those keys to having a good time is good sportsmanship. You can see as our 7 principles of Intramural Sports state, hey, sportsmanship is one of those key 7 principles. It's probably right behind safety with regards to the priority structure in Intramurals. We want you to come out, enjoy yourself, but also behave properly when you're there so that everyone, including your teammates, your opponents, the game officials, the Intramural Sports staff, has a good time and enjoys their time in our program. So what happens in sportsmanship, for example, is you receive 2 scores, one of them being sportsmanship, another being the game score. So your first score in a contest is what you've got out there in goals or runs or points. So 72 to 68 in a basketball game, that's one score that we write down. But we also write down a separate sportsmanship score, which rates your team on how it's behaving, its attitude, and the behavior of fans and players that are related to your team. And it is that team sportsmanship score which is the only thing that matters for playoff qualification here. That's why we're talking about it now, because it's just that important here in intramural sports. So if you are an awful team with regards to talent, for skills for the game, maybe you're 0-4 after the regular season, but you can behave properly and have a good sportsmanship score, you're going to make the playoffs, no problem. But the reverse is also true. You might be excellent at basketball, but if you can't behave, we think sportsmanship is one of those talents you should have too. So great teams with a low sportsmanship score are simply dropped from our league and do not get to play in our playoffs. So we don't want that to happen to your team. That's why we're talking about sportsmanship right now, so that you can have your team spectators, other team followers behaving appropriately and showing positive sportsmanship when they're out there on the court or on the field for participation in intramural sports. Hey, it's your responsibility as a team captain just to pass along what we're talking about today with regards to guidelines and procedures, including sportsmanship, along with rules of the sport. So just make sure that you inform your teammates and those people who are going to be enjoying intramural sports with your team so that they come out and enjoy their experience in our program. All right, sportsmanship starts with a good game atmosphere. So we want to make sure that it remains good-natured at all times. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to be competitive and it's not going to be intense at times, but we want to make sure that the intensity level does not lead to poor sportsmanship, poor behavior, taunting of the other team, things like that, all negative impacts on the game. We want people to have fun. That's why sportsmanship needs to be positive. So while you're out at our fields, whether that's before, during, or after the game, all facets of your participation in our program should have good sportsmanship associated with it. We really like to just use this simple phrase. It's all about respect. We want you to respect your opponents, respect the game officials, because you can't play a game without either of those. So if you're respecting them and making sure that sportsmanship is high, then I think you'll have a good time in participating in our league with sportsmanship and just in general competition. We have a rating scale, just like many other university intramural programs do. We have one here at Florida State we're going to talk about over the next couple of minutes so that you can know how we will rate you and get that sportsmanship score to the right level for the playoffs. Each team is rated every game on sportsmanship by the contest officials, the referees or the umpires that are working your particular game. Now note also that our supervisors and other administrative staff can provide some input. It's a team effort in getting your sportsmanship score, so maybe our staff sees something positive you do, or your teammates do, or your spectators do, or maybe we see something negative. So it's a whole experience. Also, our IM staff can amend the rating if we see something before, during, and after a contest that doesn't necessarily occur on the field that may be positive or negative. So our umpires and our referees have the first decision, but our other staff there at the facility can also add or subtract points based on their experience with your team. So we want you to be good at all times. Now, a team is responsible for the actions of the individual team members and players along with the spectators related to it. We know that you probably know your spectators better than we do. We don't know who they are. They might be a girlfriend or a boyfriend or just some friends from the organization or from your residence hall. Well, we want you to help us out with making sure that they are behaving properly, so that's why you're responsible for their conduct as well. So your efforts in assisting us, the officials and the staff, and calming difficult situations that involve your team are certainly very important in keeping your sportsmanship high. Each participant, however, should choose your teammates carefully, because one teammate can really ruin it for the entire team. If we have one person that goes off the deep end with poor sportsmanship, that may cost your entire team to be dropped from the league. And that's one person out of maybe 10 or 12 on your team, and the other folks are going to be very disappointed. So make sure that you're choosing your teammates carefully. If you start off strong with the right teammates who are going to display good sportsmanship, then you have really not much to worry about in our program. When are you rated and where are you rated on sportsmanship? Well, it's in all facets of your participation. That means before, during, and after a contest. So starts with when you park in the parking lot and come in to check in, certainly during your game, and then after your game. Maybe it's super intense, but that doesn't mean you can have poor sportsmanship on your way out of the facility either. We want you to be behaving appropriately and responsibly throughout your time at Intramural Sports. How can you help your rating? Let's talk about positives. And most of it's common sense, but we're going to talk about ways in which you can keep your rating high. Some of those are, well, just demonstrating good sportsmanship towards members of both teams, spectators, officials, and other IM staff. Just coming out with that right attitude from the start certainly is going to be a benefit to your sportsmanship rating. Exhibiting control over your team and, along with its spectators, conversing reasonably and rationally when you have a question about a rule. You're not always going to agree with our officials, and we have some tough calls to make out there, but if you have a question or a discussion you'd like to have, reasonable and rational is fine, but yelling at our staff certainly does not help the atmosphere at all. So doing those things appropriately are certainly going to help your rating. Team members that participate in the spirit and intent of the rules are what we want, and also accepting the judgment decisions made by our officials during a contest will help your rating. Now, we're going to get some things wrong. We hope to get most things right as game officials, but we also know that you have perhaps been playing the game longer. Maybe you've been playing basketball for 10 years, and some of our officials have only been working for 1 or 2 weeks. So they're working on improving their skills, and we hope we can do that for you, but we also know that you're not going to hit every jump shot, and we're not going to make every call right, so there's certainly some give and take between officials and participants, and it's easier to say when you're not out there on the court, but we hope you'll remember that as you're playing basketball or soccer or any of the other sports we have to offer. Our game officials are students just like you, trying to do the best job that they can. Respect also shown for FSU equipment, facilities. Make sure that you're not coming out and doing something that might break or damage things that we have. So showing respect for equipment and facilities will help your rating. What hurts your rating? Well, basically the opposite of what we've just talked about. Continually complaining about officials' decisions or displaying dissension throughout the game, certainly this creates a negative atmosphere. Constructive criticism is good, but just constant complaining is not good. Excessive arguing between teams or excessive arguing between spectators. We don't want to see that in any way, shape, or form, so this would hurt your rating if it occurs too much. Hey, the team captain should also help us out, as we already mentioned. So if you're not helpful out there on the fields, maybe you have little control over your team, or you're conversing in a dissenting manner with our officials, or you're just not cooperating with our game staff, all these things can have a negative impact on your sportsmanship rating. And then the common sense things, penalties for unsportsmanlike conduct or player ejections for unsportsmanlike conduct. These are things that are not going to help, makes sense. Also taunting the opponent or even opposing team spectators, trash talk, things of that nature, are things we like to keep at a minimum, or actually not at all, so that would hurt your rating if that happens too much. Other things that hurt your rating, which are just common sense, public indecency, vulgarity or obscenity, whether it's directed or not at someone, but we just don't need this as part of our program, and that would damage your rating. Also damaging our equipment and leaving trash at the fields. We want you to clean it up on your way out, so make sure you do that. If that doesn't happen, that can also result in a decline in your sportsmanship rating. And finally, more common sense things, fighting, no good. Threatening behavior, whether verbal or nonverbal, towards staff, towards an opponent. This is not acceptable in intramural sports, will hurt your sportsmanship rating, and this, along with other things on the previous slide, may result in further penalties. It's not just about getting a lowering of your sportsmanship rating, but certainly this could result in ejections and other things that might happen on campus. We don't want that to happen. And individuals or teams playing after consuming alcohol and drugs, that obviously is a no-no too. All right, here's that rating scale. I mentioned that we will give you a rating. Well, we're going to give you a rating between 0 and 4. 4 being excellent. We want you to strive for that every time, where your team members and your spectators are respectful of the opponents, they're respectful of the game officials, they even encourage each other's efforts. Hey, we want a positive game for everybody. Now, acceptable is a 3. That's what you need to make it into the playoffs. We'll talk about the average that is required in just a second. But acceptable maybe has 1 or 2 minor incidents, but isn't too bad. You can see 2 is a needs improvement. 1 is unacceptable. And 0 is season ending, and we don't like to dish out zeros very much. It really is very rare, but we will rate you from 0 to 4, and half points, quarter points are also acceptable, so you might get a 3.75 or a 2.25 or something like that in your game. Now, you need a 3.0 average to make it into the playoffs. So we take all the games that you've played during the season and put together your sportsmanship average as we head into the playoffs. And if you have 3.0 or better, you make it. If you have less than that, you don't. It's pretty simple. However, please note that we want you to have good sportsmanship all the time, but you want to start strong, because if you have a rain out at softball or flag football, that is no score, so it doesn't factor into your rating at all. So you don't have as many chances to bring that rating up if you have a poor score. So having good ratings throughout the season will help in case you maybe have that one night where things were a little too intense and maybe sportsmanship wasn't the best you could have had. Hey, in the playoffs, 2.4 or lower will get you in some sort of trouble. We can't immediately drop you from the tournament if you win a game and then you have a poor sportsmanship rating of a 2.4 or lower. So you want to check with our staff if you have a tough night during the playoffs. And know also on your last playoff game, if you lose, that's not your free reign to come out and show poor sportsmanship. If you have a very poor rating rating on that last game that you play, we may follow up with the team captain or individuals or the team for further penalties even after the season is over. Our goal here again is to encourage good sportsmanship throughout the year. Now, our officials, as I already mentioned, those referees and umpires are going to assign your rating at the conclusion of every game. We won't talk to you about your sportsmanship rating because we like to keep conflicts to a minimum, but we will, not our officials, but our supervisors will be more than happy to converse with you. So if you have a tough game, we encourage you to find someone in a polo shirt or wearing our supervisor name tag at the fields or at the gym and talk to them about how your team did in its sportsmanship rating. And they will explain what the score was and how you can perhaps improve that or what factors went into having a negative rating. You can also view your sportsmanship ratings, team captains can, by stopping by the Intramural Sports office. It's located in 1035 Telly Gym, right next door to the Leach Center, and we'll help you out with knowing how you've been doing in the season and see what you need perhaps to improve your rating if you have a low score. Player and spectator ejections are the last part of our sportsmanship guidelines package today, and we don't want them to happen either, but if they do, because we have a handful of ejections in almost every sport, we require follow-up. So if a player is ejected, they are immediately ineligible for all competition in intramural sports until they come meet with us in the Intramural Sports office. We have a sit-down, we discuss the incident, and we move forward with a suspension or maybe no suspension, a probationary period, something to that effect. But they have 7 days to follow up. So if they get ejected on Monday, they have until the next Monday to come in and meet with us or set up an appointment so we can handle this discussion and move forward in a positive manner. If people who are ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct do not do that, well, we can suspend them from the Leach Center and some other facilities. We may even turn the case over to the Dean of Students office. And again, we don't want that to happen, so if folks just follow up with us, we'll be able to clear the issue as soon as possible. Hey, that's sportsmanship. It's part of your team captain's exam. So if you're watching this along with Sport Rules and our Team Captain's podcast to be ready for the captain's exam, make sure you take it by 8 a.m. on the day of the captain's meeting. You got to get the required score. If you forget to take the exam or just can't make the score that's necessary, you can always attend the captain's meeting in person. We'll try to explain all this all over again, and you'll be ready to go with your season. But if you don't take the exam, then we will simply just drop your team's registration. So make sure you do this. Also, changes to your registration. Maybe that's a different division, or you're just ready to drop out of the league all of a sudden. You have to do that by 5 o'clock on the last day of the registration period. And you can visit our website for more information for team captains. We have our team captains guide. We also have regular season and playoff schedules available there, along with our playoff draw meeting and other important information you need to know for the particular sport you're playing. It's all available on our website at fsu.campusrec.com/im. Hey, with questions about sportsmanship or anything else we do in intramural sports, give us a call. We're more than happy to help at 850-644-2430, or you can email us from our website. It's at fsu.campusrec.com/im. With a look at sportsmanship, I'm David Peters for Florida State University and Intramural Sports. Have fun and good luck this intramural sports season.